Also, just want to say one thing in relation to some of the one of the things I saw yesterday. You know, we signed the Parents' Rights in Education bill. It's interesting when, like, a Disney-owned ABC would put that out on tweet. They'd say, Governor DeSantis signs bill to prohibit instruction in sexual identity and gender identity in some grades. Some grades. Why would they say some grades instead of K through 3? It's just amazing if you're trying to inform the... So you saw a lot of this, but then for Disney to come out and put a statement and say that the bill should have never passed and that they are going to actively work to repeal it, I think, one, was fundamentally dishonest, but two, I think that crossed the line. This state is governed by the interests of the people of the state of Florida. It is not based on the demands of California corporate executives. They do not run this state. They do not control this state. I also thought it was interesting. I talked to the Speaker of the House yesterday afternoon, and he said Disney never called him while they were putting this through the House. They didn't seem to have a problem with it when it was going through. If this was such an affront, why weren't they speaking up at the outset? And yet they won't. And then for them to say they're going to actively work to repeal substantive protections for parents as a company that is supposedly marketing its services to parents with young children, I think they crossed the line. And, you know, people ask me, you know, kind of about, you know, their posture on the bill. I said, you know what? If we would have put in the bill that you were not allowed to have curriculum that discussed the oppression of the Uyghurs in China, Disney would have endorsed that in a second. And that's the hypocrisy of this. And, you know, we're going to make sure we're fighting back when people are threatening our parents and threatening our kids. What's that? Is the legislature going to agree with your interpretation? So here's what I think. I think they agree on this. I think what they said is initially, we just have to follow the case law from last decade, which I'm not sure, quite frankly, is going to end up being good law if this goes up to the current court. And we're going to follow the text of the state constitution. And they really didn't do the analysis about the 14th Amendment. And I think their view is, well, it's in our state constitution. Of course, that's a compelling state interest. That has not ever been held to be the case, and that's not. So I think now they do understand that this is something that is a very, very live issue. I mean, you can just see the U.S. Supreme Court just kicked back the Wisconsin legislative districts. Why? Because there was racial gerrymandering. The Supreme Court took the Alabama case. They put a stay on the decision of the three-judge panel. They took the Alabama case. They would not have taken that case under that posture unless they were going to make sure that they're going to limit the role that race plays in congressional redistricting. I think that's almost assuredly. So I think that they understand kind of some of the judicial evolutions that have happened over the last few months. And quite frankly, I mean, I think this analysis is something that's been very powerful. I think most people, certainly most conservative lawyers who look at these issues, you know, agree with this analysis. And obviously, the leadership in the legislature, they're going to be more in line with what a lot of the conservative lawyers think. So I think we understand, but we also understand that what they did in the map that I just vetoed, you know, they did a primary and secondary map. I understood what the Senate did to keep that long snake district, which was a pure racial gerrymander. It was not a VRA-protected seat. But I understand that because they basically said, look, the state constitution says you cannot diminish. If we don't draw it like that and weave in and out of communities to focus on, you know, maximizing the number of people by race, then we will diminish. And so they were reading that very literally. They followed kind of what the court had said last decade. So I totally understand that. I have no clue how the House then did a massive diminishment, but then still did a race-based district where they were trying to get it perform in a certain way. That I just don't understand. So I understand what the Senate did. I think that runs afoul of the 14th Amendment. I don't understand the primary map that I vetoed, how they could have ended up in that situation. So we're going to work through these issues. I think at the end of the day, you know, there's a lot that was going on in session. And then now they'll be able to come back and really focus on this. There may be some other issues to deal with, and hopefully there are. But certainly, I think they're going to have an ability to do this and do this well.
About that lawsuit, the governor said, I'm sorry, there's folks, former FDA chiefs and other folks are saying that the mask mandate for airplanes and whatnot is not going to last until the end of the month, that Biden's just trying to figure everything out.
Ashley come in and speak to that. But I mean, look, they said 15 days to slow the spread, okay? So at the end of the day, there's a legal principle at stake here. There's a constitutional principle at stake here. And you had Fauci. He had been basically on hiatus for a while, and now he's reemerged saying, you know, you can't rule out more restrictions at some point in the future, even though these restrictions have been ineffective. So even if they let it lapse, I definitely think as we get into next fall and winter, there could be an attempt to reimpose it, but I'll let Ashley speak to that.
Sure, and this is a common misunderstanding. The original CDC order, which was unlawful from the beginning, it totally goes outside the scope of federal power. It gave no one notice and comment. It imposes some sanctions, but the TSA has a separate penalty structure. And so even though you have the original order, you have this TSA order that imposes a penalty structure, and that's what they keep re-upping and keep extending. But the original order is still in place. It still also has a penalty to it. And so regardless of whether they extend this TSA order again, which, you know, Biden has routinely said, I know I don't have authority to do something, and then does it anyway. I don't know why, even when it makes no sense. I don't think anyone should assume that they're not going to extend it again in April, because that has been the history of this administration. But even if they didn't, we would still have the underlying unlawful CDC order.
Have either of you flown lately?
I fly commercial aircraft, yes.
You ever been in the middle seat on a commercial aircraft?
I mean, I've obviously done that a lot in my life, and I can tell you that it's not necessarily always the most pleasant experience when you're dealing with commercial air travel, but to impose that, and look, it's less about, I mean, I think less about me. Like if I'm traveling with my family, like my kids, 5, 4, and 2, I don't even know what it would be like to try to do, because we've never put a mask on them. But I know a lot of these families and these kids, you know, every time as a parent you would bring kids on an airplane, you always don't know, like, how are they going to react? How are they going to behave? And to have that thrown into the mix, I know has been very frustrating for an awful lot of parents.
And I can tell you routinely in my travels, watching mothers, exasperated fathers trying to control their young children, it has caused so much confusion, so much chaos, so much pressure on the employees. And as you know, the airlines themselves have demanded that the administration take a look at that and consider what they're forcing on them to do. Passengers become frustrated. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people get frustrated and angry and speak out against these flight attendants that are just trying to keep a serene, safe environment. So for many reasons, this is the right time to rescind this order.
All right, thanks, guys.
You said about your communication with Justice Thomas regarding the elections